Last night, I took one sentence, buried it in the middle of a document 150,000 words long, and asked an AI to find it. It found it. First try. Then I moved the sentence to the very start and asked again. Found it. 50,000 words, 12,000 words, every position I tried, every time. So the story you keep hearing that things fall out of the window and that's why your AI forgets is not what's happening. The window is not your problem, and that changes what this whole skill actually is. Context engineering is not about fitting more in, it's about choosing what goes in and what stays out. At the moment you press enter, 4 decisions, no code, nothing to install, and by the end you'll know which one you're getting wrong. Here's the version most people are working from. The model has a window. The window holds a certain amount. So the job is to get as much of your stuff into that window as possible. Bigger window, better answers, paste more in. And you can see why it caught on because it is simple and it feels like effort. You gather the documents, you paste the history, you drop in the whole file, and it feels like you've done the work. So people build habits on top of it. A giant standing prompt they repaste every morning, a folder they dump in wholesale, and then the answers come back polite, generic, and quietly wrong, and nobody can say why. That's the part I want to explain because the reason is not what it looks like. So I tested the belief directly. One document, one sentence hidden inside it that appears nowhere else. A made-up code name for a made-up building project. Then I asked for that code name back. I ran it at 12,000 words, at 50,000, and at 150,000, which is about 157,000 tokens. And I moved the sentence around inside the document each time. Front, middle, and the very end. Because the famous claim is that the middle is where things get lost. Every single run came back with the code name, not most. Everyone that completed. So finding a fact in a haystack is a solved problem now. And if that's the story you're working from, it's out of date. Which leaves the real question. If it can find one sentence in 150,000 words, why does it still hand you work you have to redo? Because finding is not the same as choosing. The test I ran told it exactly what to look for. Your actual work never does. You ask for a plan, and nothing in that window says which of these 400 paragraphs matter to the decision you're making, which of them are stale, which one contradicts the other, or which single line is the one you'd be fired for getting wrong. It can retrieve anything you give it. It cannot know what any of it is worth to you. That judgment never left your head, and that is the entire job. So picture the window properly, not a container you fill, a desk, and everything on the desk gets read every single time at full price before you get an answer. 4 things want space on it. Your standing instructions, how things are done here, facts, the durable truth about your business, history, what happened before this moment, and tools, the things it's allowed to reach for. Those 4 compete. Every one you enlarge, you shrink the other's share of attention, and you raise the cost of every single message, and people only ever ask what to add. The 4 decisions are about what belongs on the desk permanently, what gets fetched, what gets compressed, and what never gets on it at all. First decision, what is on the desk before you type a word? This is one file. Ordinary sentences read automatically at the start of every session, and the test for whether a line belongs in it is strict. Would this be true and useful for almost everything you ask? What the business is, who it's for, how things get done here, what must never happen, that's it. This file is not a dumping ground, and the failure mode is exactly that. It grows, someone adds a note about one project, then a paste of a spec, and 6 weeks later, it's 4,000 words of mostly irrelevant history being read before every question you ask. If it isn't almost always relevant, it belongs somewhere else. Which is decision 2. Everything else lives outside the desk and gets fetched only when the job matches. This is the piece people miss, and it's the one that makes the whole thing scale. You can have 200 pages of process. It only ever reaches for the one page the current task calls for, reads it, does the work that way, and puts it back. 200 pages in the drawer, one on the desk. The drawer can be enormous as long as what it hands over stays small. And notice, this is the opposite of the instinct. The instinct is to give it everything you have. The discipline is to give it one thing on purpose at the moment it's needed. Decision 3 is history, and this is where long projects quietly die. Every exchange adds to the pile. Keep all of it, and you're paying to reread your own false starts forever. Throw all of it away, and you get the assistant that has never met you asking the same questions on Tuesday that you answered on Monday. So neither you compress what got decided and why. What got tried and thrown out so it doesn't get suggested again next week. What's still open. 3 lines written down worth more than the whole transcript they came from because they carry the decisions instead of the conversation that produced them. And decision 4 is the one nobody talks about, which is what you deliberately leave out. This feels wrong. Leaving out information you have on purpose so the machine can do better. But every extra thing on that desk is a thing competing for attention with the thing that actually matters, and it will never tell you what it skimmed. It doesn't know it's skimmed, so it answers with the same confidence either way, and you can't tell the difference from the outside. That's why the whole skill is subtraction, not addition. The good version of this looks embarrassingly small. 1 page of standing truth, 1 fetched page, 3 lines of history. Let's be concrete about the price because it isn't only quality. Everything on the desk is red every time. So a bloated setup is a bill you pay on every single message forever for words nobody needed. That's the visible cost. The invisible one is worse. When the answer comes back wrong, you can't tell whether the model failed or whether the one line that mattered was sitting in paragraph 300 next to 400 paragraphs that didn't. Both look identical from where you're sitting. So you tune the prompt, which was never the problem, and you go round again. A clean window isn't tidiness. It's the only way the failure is legible. Now, this word is 1 rung on a ladder, and it helps to see the whole thing. Prompt engineering was the first rung, what you say. Context engineering, this one is what it can see when you say it. Above that sits harness engineering, which is the setup around the model, what tools it can reach, what it's allowed to do, how it verifies its own work. And the rung people are talking about now is loop engineering, where the thing runs on a schedule without you starting it, checks its own output, and picks up its own work. Each rung sits on the one below, which is exactly why this matters, because a loop built on a bloated window just makes the same mistake automatically forever. And here's the part I'd once said to me, none of this makes it know your business. It ends where your understanding ends. If you can't say what the decision is or what good looks like, no window in the world fixes that because the thing you're failing to give it is the thing you never wrote down. That's also the good news. It means the work isn't technical. It's writing down what you already know in ordinary sentences in a file once. And the reason that's worth doing is that it holds. You correct one line and every conversation from that second onward is right without anybody remembering to mention it. So here's what this looks like on Monday. Open one file, write the 5 things that are true for almost everything you ask, not 10, 5. Then take the giant prompt you've been repasting every morning and cut it in half because most of it is a fact that belongs in a file or a story that belongs in 3 lines. Then, one job at a time, notice what you're pasting in by hand and put that page in the drawer instead so it gets fetched when the job matches. That's the whole practice. It's not a tool. It's 4 decisions you make on purpose and the discipline to keep the desk almost empty. So the window was never the constraint. It found one sentence in 150,000 words every position I tried. What it can't do is decide what matters, and it never will because that part is yours. Everything on the desk permanently, everything fetched on demand, everything compressed, everything deliberately left out. Get those 4 right, and the same model gets sharper without you changing a single word of your prompt. So watch this one next. It takes the 3 layers this all sits inside and tests each one with the numbers. It's right here. See you in it. Let me make the drawer concrete because it sounds abstract until you see the numbers. On this machine, there are 98 of those pages, 98 separate sets of instructions for 98 different jobs, and on any given request, almost none of them are loaded. One gets pulled because the job matched it. The other 97 sit there costing nothing because they are not on the desk, they're in the drawer. Now imagine the other version where all 98 got pasted into one giant standing prompt. Same information, every word of it read before every question you ask, every one of them competing with the one that mattered. Same knowledge, opposite result. The difference isn't what you have, it's what's loaded